Brian Kelly is now the head coach at LSU. And this is something that if you followed me for a while, you know I've beat this drum to death. Even back in our independent days when we were down in Columbus, where I happen to be right now, I wanted Brian Kelly to try his hand at head coach in the SEC somewhere. Didn't really care where. It never happened. And then he got to 60 years old, and I thought maybe it never will happen. Well, it's happening. And so Brian Kelly to LSU, October 17th is where I want to take you back to. Ed Orgeron gets fired at LSU. And I came on this show the very next night, and I said, when this coaching search ramps up, you've got to be prioritizing some things. If you're Scott Woodward, you got to be prioritizing fit. And then that's the word that everyone started throwing around today. And two things that I learned from this entire process is number one, Scott Woodward nailed it. And number two, apparently I define fit a lot differently than some of you define fit. Because I heard some of you say this is a bad fit. This is an awesome fit. This is an excellent fit. It's just that maybe you and I differ on how we define fit. To me, too many folks think fit has to do with your birthplace or the pinpoint on the map where you happen to reside right now. That's not fit. Fit is defining the characteristics that embody your program and then going and finding the dude that fits most of them. I think Brian Kelly fits all of them. Nick Saban didn't grow up in Bessemer, Alabama, guys. He's the best fit in America for what Alabama football wanted to be. And so Brian Kelly, I don't care if he can't pronounce Pontchartrain the right way. If he checks those boxes, he's the right guy for your job. And I think he does. So to go back to October 17th, when Orgeron got fired, remember what we talked about on this show. We talked about a guy who could critically build, not maintain, but build organization and structure. A guy who understood the process-oriented approach over the result-oriented approach. Also wanted a guy who understood how to develop players. I talked a lot at the time about teams winning at the line of scrimmage, and certainly Brian Kelly's teams have done that. But also, do you deliver what you sell? That's what I wanted in the LSU coach. That's what all LSU folks should want in the LSU coach. I got news for you. I don't care if you're from Russia. I don't care if you're from what is now formerly Yugoslavia. If you check those boxes, you are a fit at LSU because you'll win. And if you win, you're going to be a fit at LSU because you're going to have a product on the field that all the folks there are proud of. You just got rid of a guy that if you cut him open would bleed purple and gold. Ed Orgeron could probably disassemble a fan boat and put it back together with no instruction manual. But he wasn't the right fit long-term for the job. Brian Kelly, I don't care if he's never been to Louisiana, probably a better fit for the job at LSU. So now we get to ask some questions about Brian Kelly. Because the biggest issue to me that he has to rectify in the post-2019 LSU world is I told you guys many times, I've been over on the Go 24/7 board and talked about this many times. I was texting back and forth with Shay Dixon today, talking about this very thing. In 2019, we saw what may be the best football team we've ever seen. Easily the best football team in LSU program history. We never saw another LSU team. As far as I'm concerned, we never saw a football team. Saw a bunch of individuals. So what has to happen for sustained excellence was not present. That factor was not present at LSU. And so when we got to the 2020 season, we're coming into that fall. I remember vividly saying, based on the reactions that we're getting out of camp and then watching that week one game against Mississippi State, it didn't even look like a football team. Whatever that thing is, that intangible between the bricks that holds it together, LSU didn't have that. They just had the bricks. They had a lot of pieces. They had a lot of talented players. They did not have the mortar in between that defines what a team is, that critical characteristic. And this year was not a whole lot different. They played their best football once they ended up firing their head coach. That stuff, that team, that tiger on the side of that helmet over just a roster full of names, that's the stuff that's got to get corrected. That's the bad news, but it's also the good news because those names on that roster, if you can interconnect it and you make it into a team again, this is not a 5-year rebuild. It's not even a 2-year rebuild. Some people have been saying Brian Kelly can compete in the national landscape as early as next year. Oh, I fully believe that. I absolutely believe that. Now, is there some stuff that's got to be fixed? Yeah. Is the roster perfect? No, it's not. But relative to other job openings that you normally have to take over because it was a disaster, this was change the tires. This was not completely overhaul the transmission. So yeah, there's some stuff that has to happen there, but I can't wait to see how he recruits. He was on this show. We had Brian Kelly on Late Kick this time about a year and a half ago. And he point blank told you, I tweeted this video out last night. He point blank told you, I cannot recruit at Notre Dame the way I want to. Now, he didn't say it like that, but if you read between the lines and if you watch that interview at the time or look at the video I tweeted out last night, he's telling you there are a lot of guys they recruit in these Southern programs and these major programs we can't even bother with. We can't even waste time going after them. We know we can't get them in school. He doesn't have to worry about that anymore. He gets to go after the same guys Georgia does, same guys Florida does, same guys, obviously, that LSU's always gone after. Now, that's a catch-22 because going after them is not the key. Landing them is the key. I think it's very misguided to look at Brian Kelly's recruiting history and assume that that's an apples-to-apples comparison about what he'll be at LSU. I think it's a great hire. I am ecstatic about the hire for LSU. I am probably in the minority with what I'm about to say. I prefer Brian Kelly over Lincoln Riley because I love the fact that Brian Kelly has built and then sustained a winner. That's not to say Lincoln Riley can't. But as I told you at the outset of this search, I don't believe in taking risks. I believe in sure things. If you're LSU, if you're the top of the food chain, you don't have to take risks. This was as sure a thing as you can find. By 10 miles, it's the best resume that LSU has ever hired. But he's built them and he's sustained them now, multiple stops. Lincoln Riley, it'll sound disrespectful, but I'm going to put it this way anyway because I don't know any other way to put it. Lincoln Riley has been the kid over in the passenger seat whose dad gets the car up to 60 miles an hour and then lets you sit in the lap and he lets you take the steering wheel. Well, you're not driving. You just have your hands on the steering wheel. You get in the car and you shut the door and you turn the ignition and you get that thing in drive and then you get it up to speed. That's driving. Brian Kelly is a driver. Lincoln Riley may be one day, but he has not proven that on the grand stage like Brian Kelly has. I love Brian Kelly for LSU. We will effort as best we can to get him on the show sometime in the spring. It would be a return trip for him, so we're very familiar with him. But I love the fit. Love it, love it, love it. Am ecstatic about it. I think he's one of the most misunderstood coaches in America because I simply don't believe people fully grasp the difference and the gulf in the resource gap and the admissions gap between Notre Dame and the program he's at now. And his job is not to be a mayor down there. His job is to win football games. So you want to know what a fit is? A fit is the guy who checks the boxes that it's going to take to sustain a long-term winner. And I think Scott Woodward killed it. And I think that this guy is exactly what LSU football needs.